If you visit a Starbucks coffee shop, chances are you may come across one of their value propositions on a card or a flyer, which says this: create community, make a difference in someone's day. Interesting, isn't it? Starbucks sees themselves in the business of more than just making premium cups of coffee, but also creating environments where people connect so meaningfully together that it actually changes the quality of their lives. And that's just a coffee shop. American pastor Andy Stanley, in his book Creating Community, explains what he believes that God has called the church to look like. He writes this: creating environments where authentic community can take place. Building relational, transforming communities where people are experiencing oneness with God and oneness with one another. Creating communities that are so satisfying and so compelling that they create thirst and desire in a watching world. I love that quote. As we read the New Testament, it was clear that the early church placed a high priority, a high importance on creating communities of faith. Small communities where people encouraged and strengthened one another in their relationships with God. We see a good example of this in Acts chapter 2 from verse 42, which says, "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved." If a secular coffee business understands the importance of creating environments, of creating community, how much more should we? And so that's what we're going to be looking at in this last session together. How meeting together in small group communities, how leading or co-leading a small group can help to strengthen the faith of those who are Christians, those who desire to become true disciples of Jesus Christ. Discipleship within the church in Britain has not always been as anemic as it is currently at the moment. Back in the 18th century, John Wesley was the founder of the Methodist movement. He created exceptional systems of training that fostered spiritual growth, maturity, and holiness in the lives of its followers. He created societies which were similar to churches and congregations. He created class meetings and also select bands, which are akin to the small groups today as we know them. And through his system, through his discipleship system, tens of thousands of people, of disciples, grew in their faith. Indeed, the Methodist movement is credited to the spiritual renewal in England and Wales in the 18th century. Wesley's discipleship systems, the impact of those systems was felt throughout societies for many years long after his death. I find that encouraging, and that is from the 18th century. Clearly then, both within the early church years and also through history, small group communities have been an important way, an important means of fostering spiritual growth. I like what Andy Stanley says on the importance of small group communities for encouraging spiritual growth amongst his followers. He says this: "Spiritual growth is a process. Maturity is measured by demonstrative growth in our love for God and for others. It is not a completed program or the acquisition of a skill, but a continual expression of love in our vertical relationship with God and our horizontal relationships with one another. Maturing believers are people who are growing in community with other believers, spending time together, encouraging one another, and supporting one another." So let's now think of some practicalities when it comes to leading or co-leading a small group. First of all, you will need to do some planning. Plan your structure of your group time, plan the content of what you want to teach, and also plan the actual time sequence. And of course, don't forget to cover everything with prayer. A second component, of course, is Bible study. And that includes discovering what the Word says, exploring what the Word says, but also applying the Word to their lives. A third important component in leading a small group is encouraging discussion. And one of the best ways you can do that is to ask good questions. And in the training manual, I've explained more about how you can learn to do just that. Fourthly, another thing you need to learn is also listening. And by that, I'm not just talking about just actually hearing what the people are saying, but also letting them know that you've actually heard, that you really are listening, hearing what they're saying. A fifth important component, of course, is prayer. And that includes not only you leading in prayer and covering the sessions each week in prayer, but also encouraging the small group members to learn how to take their first steps in prayer for themselves. And lastly, what I've called mirror time, in a loving and gentle way, learning how to confront maybe particular areas of sin in their lives. I'm sure by now you've come to understand the importance of making disciples, of investing in people spiritually, helping them to grow as real disciples of Jesus Christ, whether you do that through a small group community or through a one-to-one discipleship relationship. And as you make disciples, that will also have a positive impact upon our churches here in Wales. I pray that God will strengthen you and bless you as you rely on Him, as you become a true disciple maker.